Okay. Gemara. Gemara in Aramaic means to learn. Talmud is Hebrew. It also comes from the root to learn. So this is the Gemara. This is actually an English Hebrew version. This is my version that is all beat up because when you learn and beat the pages, and if you can see, I write in it. Basically, the page setup is very interesting. It begins on page 2, bet. Okay, it begins on page 2. And the way the numbering works is this. It goes by the Hebrew letter. Bet meaning 2, this is page 2. Gimel being 3, page 3. Daled being 4, page 4. But the way where it gets a little bit confusing is each page has one number. So this is bet, page Aleph, page 1. Okay, this is bet, page 2. This is Gimel, page 1. This is Gimel, page 2.
But that so the letter refers to the piece of paper.
Exactly.
It's both sides.
Exactly.
As if it could be torn out, and this is what you'd have if it got torn.
Exactly. Because, I mean, we were making these books before the printing press. So this is the way it's set up. That might not be the reason, wow, but that's the way I understood it. But your assessment is entirely accurate, that what we're talking about here is the actual piece of paper and not how it fits into the book. So this is bet, page 1, or as we say in Hebrew, bet amud aleph. And this is bet amud bet. This is gimel amud aleph. This is gimel amud bet, or gimel page 1, gimel page 2. Okay, now, that being said, another thing. So the main axiom is the Mishnah. The Mishnah is a very short statement of oral law. Okay, so for example, this is brachos. Brachot is the very beginning of the Gemara. The Gemara is organized into 6 orders, each order having a main topic. So for example, it might have something having to do with holidays or time, including Shabbos. It might have something to do with agricultural laws, right? The one that most people learn is Nezikim, having to do with monetary laws. So it's organized into 6 main hyper topics. Then you have a Mishnah, which is the oral law. And here you can see it starts in the big text, which it doesn't always do. It only does this in the beginning of the chapter. And it goes down to the 2 dots and the Gimel Mem. The Gimel Mem, of course, means Gemara. So here you have the Mishnah. The Gemara starts here. Just to give you an idea, the Gemara starts here, and it's a loose discussion about the Mishnah. And in here, the Gemara actually goes all along here. And the next Mishnah doesn't begin until, let me see. Come on, where's the next Mishnah? Okay. Did I miss it? The next Mishnah starts, I don't know. Way in there.
So this is saying there's just lots and lots
there's
of teaching
lots and
Mishnah.
lots of discussion, in depth about. Here's the next Mishnah. So we have, this is on Tet Amud Bet. So this is 9 full pages of Gemara, and the Gemara uses.
So what does Mishnah mean? What does Gemara mean?
Mishnah Matnitin means, I don't know really. I think it means just to go over, to, I don't know.
Okay.
And Gemara, as I said, means a teaching. So it's like, what is encyclopedia? I don't know. So this is the Mishnah, and then you have 9 pages of discussion. But that's not all. Okay.
Okay.
When you look at a page of like this, and this sounds really weird, but you get very used to it, and these columns,
and it works then.
Yeah, and it works. These columns on the inside of the page are Rashi. Rashi stands for Rav Shlomo Yitzchaki. He lived in medieval times. He was a wine merchant, and he also had a very famous and important explanation of the Torah and also of the Gemara. And Rashi, he, in theory, explains the simple meaning of things. Mm-hmm. Where when you're dealing with text, it's very important just to get the simple learning. But even that's not such a simple statement. Rashi was the product of a tradition of learning. So Rashi is kind of like he's the roots. You grab hold of the roots and then you run from there. Here...
But that is in the Ashkenazi tradition that he's the roots, or would it be in the Sephardic tradition?
He's generally also accepted by the Sephardi. There's no question about that. We're talking medieval times. There wasn't.
But he was an Ashkenazi guy.
I believe he was Ashkenazi.
Yeah, okay.
So that's a really good question. And to be honest, I'm not entirely sure.
Whereas
I'm pretty sure he's Ashkenazi.
Maimonides was.
Maimonides was Sephardi, but it's like we're going so far back that there's not. Like, for example, when it comes to halacha, the practical implication of the learning, the differences really, we're only, that,
gotcha.
As it is, the only people who actually take the Rambam's, Maimonides' halachas as they stand, are the Yemenites. We use it as a basis for learning, but you can't say this is what he says, so this is my halacha. Halacha is an ongoing process, and you really have to look at much more recent sources.
And halakha means the way.
Halakha means the way. It's the practical practice.
The practical concluding practice from all of the...
Right. Also, now that you raised that issue, I want to say when you learn Gemara, there's a real danger of looking at it and saying, I want to know what the halacha is, but you can't learn that way. You have to really approach it as a pure intellectual exercise, and it really goes very deep. It changes the way you think. For me, it was an incredibly beautiful experience, rearranging my thought patterns and throwing out all the garbage that Western culture threw in there.
Can you give one example of some garbage that you threw out or had to throw out?
For example, respecting your elders. It's a Western concept. The liberal thing is like young and new is good, so kids are great and kids are holy, and it's not. And then you learn about there's this beautiful thing about respecting your parents. They say you learn to respect your father because of the respect you have for rabbis. Because the rabbis, your father brought you into this world, but the rabbis and the Torah will bring you into the world to come. And so therefore, a father can say, oh, no, don't give me respect, and he's permitted to do that. But a rabbi cannot, because he's actually the embodiment of the respect for the Torah, and he cannot relinquish or cancel out the respect for the Torah because that's God's. So things like that where you're like, oh, kids. I was told that when the Ethiopians came over, they didn't have enough room in the dining hall for everyone, so they wanted to feed the kids first. And the kids refused to eat until the parents ate.
Oh. And
just to get a new look, that you're actually doing damage to your kids by not giving them the framework of respecting their parents. You're damaging them. You're giving them a warped and improper perception of what the world is like, what the world is about. So
And you learned that in the Gemara.
Yeah, sure.
Because there was a Mishnah related to it.
Because the Gemara explained these aspects of how to respect your parents.
And who would have written the Gemara? It wasn't Rashi, because he's
No. Rashi is medieval. We're going back to. I mean, this is
back to 200, 300.
Well, actually, there is a tradition that this was the oral tradition. Was given at Mount Sinai and handed down from generation to generation, and the way it was given over was when you get rabbinic certification they call it smicha, but it's not, because smicha is really it means to be adjacent to lismoch, and the rabbi would when he felt that his student was a true representation of his line of tradition, he would put his hands on his head and push down. In the same way you would do for a sin offering.
Wow.
To say, I am one with this person. So.
Just one other question. Pirkei Avot is something that we teach on Root Source. It's the chapters of the fathers, basically the sayings of the 70 elders.
It's part of the Gemara.
It's part of the Gemara.
It's part of the Gemara.
Okay,
sure.
So Pirkei Avot is it?
It's actually a part having to do with judgments.
Okay.
And the reason it's there is because judges have to be wise in the ways of man, and you learn it in Pirkei Avot.
So Pirkei Avot is in Gemara. Is Pirkei Avot first? It is a tiny piece of Gemara.
It's a tiny piece of Gemara.
Okay. Is it even though it's tiny? Is it a central piece? Is it a primal piece, or is it an addendum piece?
No, it's as much a part of it as everything else. It's something that Jews have a tradition of learning a lot of, especially I forget which time of year we used to. But to be honest, it reminds me an awful lot of Proverbs, in that it's like wise sayings, and they're really good to learn. They're really easy to learn, and there you definitely get a sense of tradition, because it speaks about how one man gave to another. They use the word for the word tradition is there's a custom and there's a tradition. Custom is minhag. It means something you do, something it's a habit. When we talk about a tradition, as in this sense, it's a masora, and a masora means to transfer, and it's a much more intimate process. So, as we were saying, this is the Rashi on the inside of the page, when you open it, and the outside is Tosfot. Tosfot is grandsons of Rashi, so they're a few generations later, and the difference is they don't give the simple explanation. They actually raise really deep, difficult questions. So, yeah, there are other things on the side, and then this is as I said, this is the Gemara, this is the Rashi, this is Tosfot. The Gemara is written.
What time period was Tosfot?
Two generations after Rashi.
Okay.
So
is he commenting on Rashi's comments?
Frequently.
Okay.
Frequently.
But he's also commenting directly on the Gemara.
Right. And Rashi generally doesn't raise difficulties or questions. Rashi generally is here to give the simplest explanation.
Okay.
So if you're just starting out, don't learn the Tosfot. Okay. Right. Also, in a typical Gemara, there's at the end you'll have different commentaries. So there's commentaries on the Gemara, which each has a different purpose. A lot of it's to bring down halacha, since a lot of it's just to explain it. Depends on for example, this is the Rambam's commentary on the Mishnah, which, if I'm not mistaken, he wrote when he was 13 years old. So there's a lot of commentary on the Gemara. Just to give you an idea, this is Brachot, which is the first section, and
this is the tractate.
This is the tractate of brachot, blessings. Has a lot to do with prayer and the nature of prayer. It has 9 chapters and 64 pages, double-sided, so it's like 128 pages. 64 actual pieces of paper with 2 sides. And it's written in a kind of Gemara.
I one other question. If you showed over on your bookcase a very compact version of this, but it's basically a photographic reduction of each of those pages. There's no such thing as a pagination difference.
Oh, no, Talmud, it's absolutely not a pagination difference.
There's no because you don't paginate.
So, for example, yeah. So that's, so Gemara is like universal. So, for example, if you look,
and the layout's universal.
The layout is absolutely universal. The layout does not change. So, for example, we see this and this are precisely the same. Yeah. The same Tosfot, the same Rashi. Hi, my wife's home. So this is but you see they're precisely the same. It gets a little weird. For example, the Rashi and the Tosfot and a lot of the commentaries are written in what's called Rashi script, which is not. Rashi actually did not write in Rashi script.
What is Rashi?
Rashi script is different letters, and it was actually invented by printers.
What? It's not.
It's not Hebrew letters.
But it looks like Hebrew. Does it look like Hebrew?
If you look at it real carefully, doesn't look like Hebrew letters, and the reason is printers did it in order to get more letters on the page, because you're talking about a lot of words. And really, so it's really tiny. And
what was the original language that Rashi wrote in?
Hebrew.
Okay.
He wrote Hebrew.
So it is like a reduction. It's like a Hebrew reduction.
It's just smaller letters.
Okay.
It's like shorthand letters, but it's Hebrew.
Like if you get ha, you could write it with something.
Well, the actual hey would be a smaller letter, and the aleph would be a smaller letter.
Okay, but every letter's still there. It's just
every letter is still
like
there.
A font. It's
like a different font.
It's like a Rashi font of Hebrew.
Precisely, wow, that's amazing. It is a different font. Which is, it gets. Gemara is very, very intimidating. I remember when I moved to Israel and I learned Hebrew, and then I went into yeshiva, and I'm like, come on, guys, I learned Hebrew. Now I have to learn Aramaic. And now I have to learn different Hebrew letters and a different font. And yes, you do. Also, the difficult thing about Gemara, if you're going to jump into it, and I'll give you a heads up, the difficult thing about Gemara is not the language so much. The really difficult thing is the thought process. You have different patterns of thought that reoccur, different patterns of questions. Saltka date chamina. You would have thought, had we not said this, then you would have thought this, and this is incorrect. Havamina. You might have said, there's all kinds of nafkamina. Oh, what is the practical implication of what we just said? So there's different ways, different thought patterns. And if you're going to jump into Gemara, in Western thought, it's like they want you to get the answer. The answer in Gemara thought, it is absolutely incorrect to say that the end justifies the means, because the means is the end, the actual learning process. So you want to slow down your thought process and inspect it. You want to say, how is my brain thinking about this? When we say don't murder, well, let's go through the process that led up to that conclusion. Okay? When we say honor your father, well, yeah, it's a good thing, but to just say it's a good thing is a stupid thing to say. A really smart thing to say is, God created the world. There's a world to come. There are ways to get to the world to come. one of the ways to get to the world to come is to have a father who brings you into this world. And if my father brought me into this world and did not show me the proper ways to go into the world to come, then what does that mean about him bringing me into this world? So by slowing it down and looking at the steps, you actually are coming much closer to Hashem.
Interesting. Which I suppose is the reason why God created the earth in 7 days rather than just all at once. Because by slowing it down, he revealed, we get closer to him by looking at his process.
Yafeh ma'od. Beautiful. I would totally agree with that. Because there is something very deep and beautiful to learn in the process about how we approach Hashem. I think you're absolutely correct in that, 100%. Because you have a Havamina, you would have said Hashem could have created the world in 1 day. So what's the nafkamina? My nafkamina. So what is the implication of it being created in 7 days? You would say, to see the process, to see the specialness of each individual thing, and how man is actually the product of a long process, and not just the product of one instant act where we're the same as everything else. Because saying we're the same as everything else is incorrect. So yes.
There you go.
So there you go.
As they say in my world, that preaches.
If I could think up an Aramaic expression for that, we'd have something. But so that's why and also, I think it would be, though people have done it, I think it would be incorrect to learn Gemara and not use it as a tool for coming closer to Hashem.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I think that would be incorrect, though people have done it.
You mentioned Rashi, you mentioned Maimonides, the guy on the outside. Tosfot.
Which is not one guy, that's actually a whole school.
Okay,
so Tosfot is plural. Rashi is one guy.
And there's many different rabbis, like if you pick up an art scroll, Humash, they have commentary on verses, and they pick some of the most famous commentaries from a lot of different people.
That's also, by the way, what Rashi did.
Okay.
Rashi was a school of thought, so Rashi will often bring like Midrash Rabbah, he'll bring a Midrash from here, he'll bring a different... But Rashi's also, he brings the highlights to you.
So my question is this: for you personally, is there a rabbi who you are commonly drawn to? You like the way this particular rabbi approaches things a lot, from all of these famous sages.
That depends for what you mean. First of all, when it comes to learning, I love Rashi. Because when you first start out, Rashi's your training wheels. And then after you've been learning for a very long time, you realize that Rashi is so much deeper and so much more beautiful than you ever realized. So...
You know what? I thought you were going to say, after you've been doing this for a long time, you learned that these other people are so much beautiful and deeper. But you said, no, Rashi is actually so much more beautiful. So even though he speaks in simple terms, there's a lot of depth to it. And that's what you like.
There's also, when I learned Chumash, Sforno also supposedly brings the... and I don't know the actual biography of Sforno. He also brings the pshat, the simple reading. And sometimes he will blow your socks off. But you have to be...
I've seen stuff he's written. It blows me away.
Yeah, and it's like, it seems at first glance, it's like, oh, this is right. Yeah, simple. Wait a second. At heart, I'm very much a chassid. So I spent...
And Hasidic is like is sort of looking at the spiritual side of life?
That would be accurate. That would be accurate, but that's a good place to start. It was started by the Baal Shem Tov. What was he, 1600? I don't know when the Baal Shem... I think it was 1600.
I think early 1700s.
Was it? Right. And the Baal Shem Tov, what he basically did was... there were a lot of aspects to it. One is he was a social movement, where before this there was an elitism, which I'm naturally anti-elitist. It was like, who has time or energy to learn? It's like you finish a day of plowing or whatever you did, and it was just like, I'm tired, I'm not gonna, and it was just very difficult. And the Baal Shem Tov said, no, your love for Hashem, your joy, your intention is more important. So it was a social movement. At the same time, he brought in mysticism or Kabbalah, but he didn't bring it in like, oh, let's go out to the field and make a goal and make these, do magic. He was just like bringing deeper meanings to simple acts, like lighting Hanukkah candles. What is it really? You're just lighting a candle. Give me a break. It's what you do. It's what they used to do to get around the house at night. But he brought the deeper meanings to those things. And I just find it to be much more all-encompassing because you can, there's a lot of mitzvahs and they can take up a lot of time. But what are you doing when you're walking down the street? And he would say, no, you're talking to Hashem. You're talking to God. And so I think on that level, the Hasidus talks to me.
Do you think that, our Jewish sage, Paul, in the Christian world, he advised us, he says, pray without ceasing. Like, always be praying. Do you think that that's like a Hasidic kind of a thought?
No and yes. There's a lot of mitzvahs and they can take up a lot of time. But what are you doing when you're walking down the street? And he would say, no, you're talking to Hashem. You're talking to God. And so I think on that level, the Hasidus talks to me.
Do you think that, our Jewish sage, Paul, in the Christian world, he advised us, he says, pray without ceasing. Like, always be praying. Do you think that that's like a Hasidic kind of a thought?
No and yes. Okay. Because first of all, that precise expression comes from the Gemara. It comes from Masechet Brachos, where we look at right here, cool. where one of the, I think it was Rabbi Yochanan, he said, "Halavai yitpalel adam kol hayom kulo." Halavai, would that it be so that man would pray all day long? And it comes in a section where they're saying, "Oh, when should you daven in the morning? When should you daven in the afternoon? When should you daven in the evening?" Oh. Halavai, we should pray all day long. So I am sure Paul was quoting the Gemara.
By the way, I have no doubt. I mean, there was many things that he wrote that are found. But I'm thinking of, okay, then let me ask it another way. Do you think the Hasidic thought perhaps connects back to sages like who you just described? Who are thinking about would that we should pray all day long? Is that
I think it was. I mean, yeah, it didn't come from outside.
Yeah.
It certainly came from within the Jewish tradition. I do not mean to denigrate or put down anyone, but I am fairly sure that, as you cited Paul, a lot of these basic concepts of Hasidus, a lot of things I've heard about Christianity have led me to believe that it was, in its time, a form of Hasidus.
I mean, it's true because
just precisely what you said about Paul.
Even Jesus says, "Look, my kingdom is not of this world. It's a heavenly thing." So
that's very much reminds me of the Baal Shem Tov. I would say that and there's no one who would say that. Actually, probably there's some people at the time. There was a serious concern. There was a serious concern in the very beginning of Hasidut that Hasidut was not Judaism. We're getting into really dicey territory. There was a big dispute, and there was a movement called the Misnagdim. It nearly split Judaism apart. Because they felt that the Hasidut was not Judaism. Part of the reason being because they venerated the Rebbe, the spiritual leader.
Sure.
And they were and it was not so long after Shabtai Tzvi, who was a false Messiah, who claimed he was the Messiah. Right. He had an awful lot of followers. Right. One of the things he said was, we don't have to do mitzvahs anymore. And he eventually was confronted by, if I'm not mistaken, by the Ottoman ruler.
Yes.
And he converted to Islam.
Which shows the guy's off.
Which is a pretty good sign that he was not the Messiah. Exactly. So, I mean, I think, and I might be okay, so I might get a lot of people slamming me for this. But the more I learn about Christianity, the more I really am convinced that at its very roots, its roots were very similar to the roots of Hasidut in a lot of ways, in that it was a branching off from Judaism, branching off from mainstream Judaism in a radical way. It was a social movement in the same way. It focused on intention and connection to Hashem in the same way that Hasidut did. I think it's actually a historical accident that we became two religions.
It's interesting. I've never thought about that, what you just said. I've never thought
really?
about that
I'm surprised.
before.
I thought you would.
But, only when I heard, and that was just very recently on this trip to Israel, that I heard somebody say that Hasidut is considered to be less rigorous than traditional Judaism.
Absolutely not correct, but okay.
But this
it's
was
not
an
accurate,
opinion.
but okay.
This was an opinion.
Okay.
And so what that isn't that the thing about Christianity? It's sort of easy, and we accept Jesus and we come in quickly, and then there's an opportunity to learn and go deeper. But anyway, and that's putting aside the issues of all the things that traditionally separate Christians and Jews, I think if all Jews accepted the Christianity as a sect of Judaism today, just theoretically, then the dig on us would be we're not formal enough. We're not structured, and we're and in fact we are. We're lazy. We're, as compared to Jewish learning, we're very lazy.
I don't know if I would say lazy. To be really honest, I think that Christians who love the Bible and love Israel are in many ways much closer to the original Judaism. They're certainly much closer to Judaism than secular Jews who reject the Bible and reject Israel. I think there's no doubt about that.
Yeah. Look, and
I would be willing to entertain thoughts that take that a little bit further, but I'm just not so sure I can put voice to that.
Yeah, look, I'm not, and
but I think that's very clearly true.
I actually don't mean lazy as an angry judgment. What I mean is just that the average Christian, they do the studies. The average Christian prays 2 minutes a day. The average Orthodox Jew prays an hour and 15 minutes a day.
You're giving us the benefit of the doubt.
The average Christian doesn't read his Bible. The average Orthodox Jew is reading at least the parashah. Listening to it read every week.
You're also giving us the benefit of the doubt. But I hear that.
And then and then the average Bible student in America goes and takes a 15-hour course load, 15 hours a week of study, and then goes and does their homework and stuff. And then you go into the yeshiva, and it's going from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. and you live and breathe and everything. So
I would even take it further and say, for example, the average Christians who do read the Bible, if they came into my house, like you did, we would probably spend the whole day together and never once mention the news, never once mention the hottest TV show or something we saw on the internet. We would have a lot more to connect on than a secular Jew who came into my house and he just doesn't know what to talk about. And I think that's significant. That I think is the major driving factor in the world today.
Yes.
That's driving evangelical Christians and Jews together.
Yeah, and look,
Israel Jews.
And the only reason that Christianity works, in my opinion, that it isn't as bad off as those ratios I just gave you are. The reason is because of this gift of the Spirit, where in a way the Torah can be written on our hearts. even though we don't know it, but we can sort of be nudged into one way or another in a given situation, and that helps. It's the benefit of the new covenant. Yeah, we can talk about that some other time. But I think it's the only reason that we do as well as we do, and I think we do pretty well, like you said, especially if we love Israel.
My impression, and correct me if I'm wrong, part of my problem is I haven't been in America for 27 years, and even when I was there, I didn't connect to Christians. Yeah. My impression is that Christianity, there's segments of Christianity that are going through very big changes that are on the same level as the Protestant Reformation. I haven't been in America for 27 years, and even when I was there, I didn't connect to Christians. Yeah. My impression is that Christianity, there's segments of Christianity that are going through very big changes that are on the same level as the Protestant Reformation. I think so.
Well, if you mean the church attendance is declining,
yes,
for sure.
Yes.
If you
the church is in crisis.
If you mean that the fastest growing segment of the religious population is those who believe in nothing, that's true. But there's also, we say, when the dark gets darker, the light gets brighter.
Yes.
And so there's also a love. And very good things happen in the Christian community too. But
I'm sorry, the Christians that I connect to, my gosh, are they strong in faith? They're on fire. Right. And they're learning the Old Testament and they're learning the New Testament. I'm writing an article now about this new initiative for Christians and Jews together to read the Bible daily and to go through the entire Bible, including the prophets and the writings in 1 year. And these people the Bible is very accessible. And these people are they're on fire.
And it is a wonderful set of resources. And I love the internet.
And a lot of them don't belong to churches.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. A lot have left the churches because they're looking for a more authentic community experience and deeper, and being able to go in different directions of study and so forth. Of course, you can go to church on Sunday and then do that.
And by the way, but they can learn the Gemara also.
Yes, but can they really learn it just by reading it?
Okay.
Because this is the thing I was just going to say to the Christians. We have all these things accessible to us, but the level of depth of study, putting aside the identity of Messiah or whatever, but still the level of study and insight from the Jewish sages is amazing.
Yeah. Gemara was, I remember, after I learned in yeshiva, while you go to university and you go to the library and you see all these cubicles where everyone's in there. That is not learning. Okay? If you look at it, this book is ripped up, and because learning is not passive receiving. Yeah. Learning is an active process.
And I
just have to pound the book and underline and spill my coffee.
And it's not just done alone.
And it's never done alone. It is absolutely never done alone. If you go to yeshiva, you always have, it is a room full of two guys facing each other and screaming at each other. Not always screaming, but there's this, and you get the hands going, and when you get to the point where and you'll understand this guy willing one day when you start using your thumbs, all this means.
And you did yeshiva for how long?
Almost 10 years. It was about 10 years, full time. And when I say full time, I mean you'd wake up, roll out of bed, run to the spring, jump in the water. And if I wasn't praying, I was learning. There was nothing else you did. That's not exactly accurate. 4 years of it, 3 years of it, I was married, and you have to be a husband. So
yeah. And you've done enough yeshiva study that you could qualify as a rabbi, if you wanted to take that on.
I've done enough that I'm a little past that, to the point where I say
it's not important.
Right, and also whatever. Anyway, lo chashuv. But the point being that it's learning in pairs. It's like the cherubs on top of the Ark of the Covenant. They were facing each other. That's what you're doing.
Oh, that's an interesting idea.
What it's
Never
not.
thought about that.
That's the simple meaning of it. Is where is Hashem? Hashem is in the place between.
Oh my goodness.
That's what real learning is. That is learning. I don't understand where Western society got this thing of. I mean, if you want to go by yourself, you're never by yourself. You're talking to Hashem.
So the Jewish view, and the Christians will understand why I said it. The Jewish view then is that where two or more pupils come together to study the Torah, Hashem is in the midst.
Exactly.
It's in between them.
Precisely.
Okay.
And in different learning partners, what happens between you is very special. I remember when your learning partner gets married, or when you get married, it's very, very special. There's something very special that happens. It's a very, very deep connection. It's an intellectual meeting, and there's no question of that. And that's how you learn.
That is really, really.
I was told the Buddhists do that.
Huh.
I've never seen
study in pairs.
Study in pairs,
and
it's a dialogue. And even you see here, it's like it's a give and a take. It's back and forth. And I mean, and it's not a matter of the study partner. It's important that you disagree.
Yeah.
It's there's a sweetness in disagreeing. Disagreeing is finding how you're special, and then I find how I'm special, and that only comes out in contrast when we're different.
Cool.
And Rabbi Yochanan Rish Lakish. It's a very long story. It's beautiful, but the point is we have to disagree. I remember we had one guy in our yeshiva. The guy was beyond brilliant. He was really. His rabbi teaches in Boston now. The guy was beyond brilliant. He was scary smart, and he came into yeshiva 4 months later, without knowing Hebrew. 4 months later, he was teaching the highest class. He was just brilliant, beyond brilliant. The problem was finding him a learning partner. And then one day I went away to the army for a couple of weeks, and I came back, and the Rosh Yeshiva, my rabbi, came up to me and said, "Okay, you're going to learn with him." And I'm like, "But he had, this second smartest guy in the yeshiva was learning with him." He's like, "Yeah, but he just chewed right through him." So I'm like, "So what do you expect from me? I'm not that smart." And he said, "No, you disagree with everyone." I'm like, "No, I don't. Stop it." He's like, you see, you did it again. So I actually would sit down with this guy, and after a couple months, his wife walked up to me. She said, "Could you please stop it?" And I'm like, "Stop what?" She said he would come in every morning, and he would have this whole methodology, this whole theory worked out, and we would both have a cup of coffee, and I would just sit there like this, listening to him for an hour.
Yes.
And he would give out this entire holistic, rock solid theory, and then I would say, "Well, but and his wife said he will come home, and he's like, I had it all worked out." And then Eliyahu said the craziest thing, and then he had to rip it all apart and start over again and come up with something even better. And that's how he got to be even more amazing. And God bless him. And I learned so much from him. One of the things I learned is I'm not an idiot. And if I could listen to the smartest guy, this guy who is so brilliant, and not only understand him, but understand him enough to disagree with him, then he learned and I learned.
That's
cool.
Cool.
And that is learning. It's not just like, I'm the smartest guy in the class. I remember there was this one guy who was very upset that I wasn't learning. So I tutored him, and we learned together. And the next month, they actually gave a test, which is very rare. They gave a written test in the yeshiva. And he came up to me, he's like, "I'm really upset." I'm like, "Why?" He's like, "I was really excited about this, and I didn't get the highest grade." I said, "So who got the highest grade?" He said, "My learning partner." I said, "Aha, you won." You won. Your learning partner did the best on the test. That shows that you're the best Chavrusa. Chavrusa's learning partner. Right. So it's also really, really important to have a learning partner. That's essential to it. Also, when we learn Gemara, something that's really surprising is we would literally, and I'm saying literally, spend 4 hours every morning for a month on this much.
4 hours every morning for a month.
For this
on
month.
That little bit of Mishnah.
Maybe up to here.
I think that's Gemara. That's not
right.
Right. Or the Mishnah passage starting in the first part of the Gemara that's explaining.
Right.
That's explaining
because there's so much to learn.
And
the thing is, it's not about quantity, and it's not about the right answers. Like I said, it's a deeply
Right.
internal process.
Right.
It's an internal process that goes very, very deep.
Wow.
It's very addictive when you're doing it right. It's really addictive. You just get very into like, how deep can I go?
That reminds me. That's what parents say about their teenagers and video games.
Yeah.
That they get really, really deep into it and try to go really deep. I wonder if there's something in the human soul.
I think there's
that
absolutely
is drawing to actually study and know something of great importance like this.
Well, I think that is the nature of reality, and that's another truth that you get from this. That the nature of reality is, Bob Odell drove up from Jerusalem to see me. Well, that's level 1. Level 2. Bob Odell is a deep friend of mine. Level 3, Bob Odell is an amazing neshama. And his neshama and my neshama are meeting, and there's something happening very, very deep under this. And you can keep digging deeper and deeper, and there are levels to life. Wow. Life has a very, we have the 5 senses, but life goes much, much deeper than that because Hashem created it. And Hashem goes much deeper than that. Each moment of life is a segment of the Ein Sof, of the eternal. So one way you can connect to Hashem is to learn the deep, deep levels of His Word. I mean, Gemara is a good vehicle for that. You can also do that with the Bible, with Bible study. A deep meditation going deeper and deeper and deeper. So I think there's definitely that. And I think one of the horrors of Western culture is they teach exactly the opposite. There's a nihilism. There's a here, be now. No, it's not about taste this. It's not about see this. It's not about the pretty car, which is actually only pretty until you scratch the surface and then you realize it's made out of plastic. Life is much, much deeper, and it's not about the moment. It's not about the pleasure. It's so much deeper. I mean, we get a glimpse of that. Anything connected to Hashem more closely, you get a bigger glimpse of it. The connection between husband and wife is not a connection between a man and a woman. It's much, much more than that.
That's a good point.
Lighting a candle on Hanukkah or lighting a candle before Shabbos, it's not like flipping a light switch. It's a candle. It's so much deeper. And that is when you start connecting to Hashem, and that is what we're doing through the learning. Is we're going deeper and deeper and deeper until I'll read these words, and I've been over them so many times. The page is ripped, the lines are. At one point I thought, sometimes what did I think when I underlined this? Why was this Dafka, these words so important? And just going deeper and deeper and deeper. I have stuff that it's just like, they take me to a different place, and that's, I haven't done all of this. To be honest, I think I've done 4 or 5 of these books.
I'm putting the camera on
and
pretty much the Talmud.
I've done a lot of sections. I mean, look at the whole library. The whole library is like, and it's all like, it's at a certain point in my life, this book was what was doing it for me. At another point, this was important for me. And different people have different, but it's all about going deeper and deeper and deeper, and because the deep is how Hashem is. That's Hashem's nature. He can put eternity into a moment. He can contract himself, and that's what we want to do in our learning. It's not about acquiring lots of knowledge. It might be about acquiring a lot of knowledge about one little thing. I mean, obviously, this beautiful thing came out because I connected to Bob, and that's what happens between me and Bob. And
thanks, man. Thanks, man. Thanks for taking us into your heart and into your library. This is wonderful. I thought I knew you, and now I know you even better. So
we're going to get to know each other.
Thank you.
God willing, you'll dance at my kid's wedding.
I love that.
Amen.
God bless.